Remove her from the list before she sees what we did." The administrator whispered those words while looking at a human woman's name on the galaxy's most respected Academy database. And that was the moment Claire Morgan learned she had been sent somewhere that never wanted her. The mistake was supposed to be simple. A damaged file, a wrong classification code, one misplaced digit in a system that processed millions of applicants across hundreds of worlds. But the Galactic Defense Academy of Veyra Prime had one rule older than any living instructor. Once an admission was confirmed, it could never be reversed. Claire Morgan was officially a student, and the galaxy's deadliest academy had just accepted a human who was never supposed to be there. For 3 centuries, the Academy of Veyra Prime had trained the finest warriors, commanders, and strategists from across known space. Its graduates led fleets, protected royal families, and shaped the future of entire civilizations. The students who walked through its silver gates were not ordinary. They were born on high-gravity worlds, raised in warrior cultures, and tested from childhood. They were stronger, faster, and more experienced than most humans could imagine. Claire knew all of that before she arrived. She had spent the entire flight reading every piece of information she could find. She knew the Academy statistics. She knew the average height of Veyran combat students. She knew the survival records of the top graduates. She knew exactly how far behind she was. What she did not know was how she would feel standing there. When the shuttle doors opened and she stepped onto Veyra Prime, the first thing Claire noticed was not the towering buildings or the alien technology. It was the silence. Hundreds of students stopped and looked at her. Some stared with curiosity. Others looked confused. A few simply laughed. A human had entered their academy. A species many considered too young, too fragile, and too inexperienced for the challenges ahead. Claire adjusted the strap of her travel bag and kept walking. She had learned something during years of working in difficult environments. People revealed more when they thought you were harmless. "You are the human?" a voice asked. Claire turned and saw Kalen Voss standing near the entrance. He was one of the Academy's highest-ranked students, a Veyran with pale blue-silver skin and a reputation for never losing a challenge. "That's what my identification says," Claire replied. Kalen looked at the small device in her hand, then back at her. "This academy trains the galaxy's best. There must be an error." Claire gave a small nod. "Probably." Her answer surprised him. "You agree?" he asked. "I think mistakes happen," Claire said. "The important part is what people do after they realize one happened." Then she walked past him. For the first time in years, Kalen Voss did not know what to say. Claire Morgan did not arrive at the academy believing she was special. She did not think she was stronger than anyone there. She was not looking for admiration. She was simply a person who had been placed in an impossible situation and had decided to understand it before judging it. The galaxy saw a clerical error. The academy saw a weakness. Claire saw a new environment, a new challenge, and 1,000 things she could learn. They believed they had accidentally admitted the least prepared person in the galaxy. They had no idea they had just opened their doors to someone who had spent her entire life doing one thing better than anyone expected: adapting. The first lesson at the Galactic Defense Academy of Veyra Prime was not about combat, strategy, or survival. It was about understanding where you stood in the room. Claire Morgan learned that within her first 10 minutes inside the main training hall. The chamber was enormous, built from dark metal and transparent crystal walls that looked out over the mountains of Veyra Prime. Hundreds of students stood in organized groups, each representing a different world, a different species, and a different history. Some had grown up in stronger gravity. Some had natural abilities that humans could only imagine. Some had families that had served in military organizations for generations. Claire had none of that. She had a backpack, a damaged admission file, and years of experience solving problems nobody else wanted to deal with. Human students do not usually enter this program, one instructor said as he reviewed her information. His name was Commander Ryland Thorne, a respected officer who had trained thousands of academy students. He was not cruel. That almost made it worse. He looked at Claire the same way someone would look at a difficult situation they did not know how to handle. "I understand," Claire replied. "I assume there are procedures for unexpected situations." The commander paused. Most students would have argued. They would have tried to prove themselves. Claire simply accepted the information and looked for the solution. "You are not worried?" he asked. Claire thought about the question for a moment. "I did not say that." The honesty caught him off guard. "I am worried. I just do not think worrying changes the situation. Across the room, Kalen Voss watched silently. He had expected arrogance from a human. He had expected excuses. Instead, he saw someone taking notes while everyone else was deciding what she could not do. The first assignment was called the observation trial. It was designed to measure how quickly students could understand unfamiliar environments. The instructors released each student into a simulated alien settlement with limited information. The goal was simple: identify the problems, understand the people, and find the best solution. Most students immediately searched for the obvious challenges. They looked for threats, weaknesses, and tactical advantages. Claire did something different. She watched. She listened. She studied the small details others ignored. A broken supply route. A communication delay. A group of workers avoiding a specific area. After 2 hours, several students had created complicated plans. Claire submitted a simple report. Commander Thorne read it twice. "You believe the main issue is not the settlement's security system?" he asked. "No," Claire said. "The system is working. The problem is that nobody understands why people are avoiding it." "And your solution?" "Ask them." The commander looked at her report again. It was not impressive because of advanced technology or complicated strategies. It was impressive because Claire had noticed something everyone else ignored. People. Later that evening, Kalen approached her outside the Academy residence halls. "You solved the problem without using any Academy methods," he said. Claire looked at him. Maybe the problem did not need Academy methods. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Kalen had spent his entire life learning how to overcome opponents. Claire seemed to approach challenges differently. She did not search for something to defeat. She searched for something to understand. And that was the first thing the Academy did not know how to measure. The human was not trying to become the strongest person in the room. She was trying to learn everything about the room itself. Nobody noticed it yet, but that habit would soon become the reason she was impossible to predict. The third week at the Galactic Defense Academy was when the curiosity around Claire Morgan started turning into something else. At first, the other students watched her because she was different. A human among thousands of experienced alien candidates was unusual enough to attract attention. But after several days, they were no longer watching because she was strange. They were watching because they did not understand her. The next challenge was known as the survival assessment. It was considered one of the most important evaluations in the Academy because it measured something no textbook could teach: adaptation. Each student would enter a controlled wilderness environment on one of Veyra Prime's outer training zones. They would have 72 hours, limited equipment, and no direct assistance. The goal was not to defeat the environment. The goal was to understand it. When Commander Ryland Thorne explained the assignment, many students immediately started discussing strategies. Some planned to use their physical abilities. Others relied on advanced equipment and biological advantages. Claire quietly listened while organizing the small amount of equipment she had been given. Kalen noticed. "You are not preparing a plan?" he asked. Claire looked up. "I am." He glanced at the simple pack beside her. "That is a plan." She smiled slightly. "The plan is to avoid making decisions before I know what I am dealing with." Kalen studied her for a moment. Most students believe confidence comes from knowing they can win. Claire adjusted the straps on her pack. "I think confidence comes from knowing what to do when you cannot." The training zone was unlike anything Claire had experienced on Earth. The air was thinner than she was used to. The terrain changed every few miles. The weather patterns shifted without warning. For the first several hours, many students moved quickly, trying to prove they were ahead. Claire moved slowly. She stopped often. She examined the environment instead of fighting against it. She noticed patterns: the direction of the wind, the movement of local creatures, the areas where plants grew thicker, the places where the ground remained warmer after sunset. By the end of the first day, some students had built impressive shelters. Others had found advanced solutions using their natural abilities. Claire had built something simple. It was not the strongest shelter. It was not the most advanced, but it was placed in the safest location. On the second day, a group of students passed by and laughed when they saw her small setup. "That is what humans consider survival?" one of them asked. Claire looked over. "No, it is what I consider survival here." The student frowned. "You think you know this environment better than us?" Claire shook her head. "No, that is why I am paying attention." The answer stayed with them longer than they expected. Later that night, Kalen found her reviewing notes beside a small light. You record everything, he said. Claire looked at the pages filled with observations. That is how humans learn. Through writing? Kaylin asked. Through remembering mistakes, she replied. Kaylin looked toward the dark landscape beyond the training area. Your species does not have the advantages many others have. Claire nodded. We know. Then why do humans continue entering places where they are outmatched? She thought about her answer carefully. Because being outmatched is not the same as being defeated. For the first time since Claire arrived, Kaylin did not see her as a mistake in the Academy system. He saw something far more interesting. A species that survived not because the universe made things easy for them, but because they learned how to continue when it did not. And somewhere inside the Academy records, a new note quietly appeared beside Claire Morgan's name. Not a warning, not a mistake, a question. By the 4th week at the Galactic Defense Academy, nobody called Claire Morgan a mistake anymore. They still did not understand her, but they had stopped laughing. The survival assessment had changed something. Not because Claire had shown she was stronger than everyone else. She had not. She had simply shown that she approached problems differently, and that difference was becoming harder to ignore. The next challenge was one that every student looked forward to and feared at the same time. The tactical adaptation trial. Unlike the survival assessment, this test was not about enduring an unfamiliar environment. It was about reacting when everything changed. The instructors created a series of unpredictable scenarios where students had to make decisions with limited information. The first mistake was usually simple. They assumed the situation would stay the same. Claire had learned that was almost never true. When the training session began, students were placed into small groups. Claire was assigned with Kaylin Voss and 3 other top-ranked candidates from different worlds. At first, nobody spoke to her. They waited for Kaylin to take control. He always did. We should move toward the objective immediately, one student suggested. The fastest path is through the central route. Claire looked at the map displayed on the table. Why? The student looked confused. Because it is the fastest. Claire pointed at the information screen. The system shows the route is open, but it does not explain why it is open. Kaylin looked at her. You believe it is a trap? Claire shook her head. I believe we do not have enough information yet. The others exchanged looks. To them, hesitation was usually weakness. To Claire, hesitation was a chance to learn. They followed the central route, but instead of rushing forward, Claire watched the environment around them. She noticed small changes. A delay in the communication system. A pattern in the movement of the simulated civilians. A slight difference between the information they were given and what they were seeing. Stop, Claire said. Everyone turned. We need to change direction. One of the students sighed. Based on what? Claire pointed toward the display. The system wants us to believe the problem is ahead of us. But the people behind us are acting like they already know we are coming. Kaylin studied the simulation again. Slowly, his expression changed. He saw it too. The challenge was not about reaching the destination. It was about understanding the people inside the scenario. When the team adjusted their approach, they completed the trial faster than any group that day. Afterward, Commander Thorne reviewed the results with the instructors. Claire expected criticism. Instead, he asked her a question. How did you identify the change so quickly? Claire looked at the screen. I did not identify it quickly. I noticed that everyone else was ignoring it. The commander remained quiet. That is an unusual answer. Claire smiled faintly. Most people look for what confirms what they already believe. I look for what does not make sense. Later, Kaylin found her outside the training hall. The evening lights of the academy reflected across the glass walls behind them. You realize they are starting to study you, he said. Claire looked surprised. Why? Because nobody knows what category to place you in. She laughed softly. I am still trying to figure that out myself. Kaylin looked toward the academy grounds where hundreds of talented students trained every day. You know, most species come here because they believe they are already exceptional. Claire nodded. And humans. Why did you come? He asked. Claire thought about Earth. About ordinary people solving ordinary problems every day. About the quiet moments nobody celebrated. Because someone had to, she answered. Kaylin watched her walk away, and for the first time, he understood the thing that made Claire different. She was not trying to prove she belonged among the best. She was simply doing what humans had always done. She was finding a way to belong anywhere. The academy had a new habit. Every morning, when Claire Morgan walked into the main training hall, conversations became quieter. Nobody stopped talking completely anymore. They had learned that Claire noticed things when people thought she was not paying attention. The students were no longer waiting for her to fail. They were trying to understand how she kept succeeding. That was exactly what concerned some of the instructors. Claire was not winning because of physical advantages. She was winning because every challenge gave her more information. And information, they realized, was becoming her greatest advantage. Commander Ryland Thorne requested a private evaluation review with the Academy leadership. The meeting was short, but the discussion continued for hours afterward. Her results do not match her profile, one instructor said. She has no military background, no enhanced biology, and no specialized combat training. Commander Thorne looked at the data on his screen. Then perhaps we are measuring the wrong things. Meanwhile, Claire was preparing for the next stage of her training. Unlike previous assignments, this one was not announced in advance. There was no detailed explanation, no guide, no list of expectations. That alone told her something important. The Academy wanted to see how she handled uncertainty. When Claire arrived at the training area, she found Kalen waiting. "You look like you already know something," he said. Claire looked around the empty room. "I know something is missing." Kalen raised an eyebrow. "That is all. Usually when people want you to focus on what is visible, it means they do not want you looking somewhere else." Kalen almost smiled. "You always assume there is another layer." Claire shrugged. "Usually there is." The assignment began with a simple instruction. Work with your team and complete the objective. No additional information was provided. The other students immediately began discussing possible strategies. They debated leadership roles, resource allocation, and efficiency. Claire listened quietly. Then she asked a question nobody expected. "Who created this scenario?" The group looked confused. "The instructors," one student answered. "Why?" Claire looked toward the observation platform above them. "Because they are not testing whether we can complete the objective. They are testing what we do when we do not know why the objective exists." Kalen looked at her carefully. He had spent years studying strategy. But Claire approached strategy from a completely different direction. She questioned the reason behind the challenge before solving the challenge itself. The team adjusted their approach. Instead of rushing forward, they studied the environment. Instead of assuming the Academy wanted them to succeed, they considered what the Academy wanted them to learn. Hours later, they completed the assignment. Not with the fastest time, not with the most impressive display, but with the highest evaluation score. After the results were posted, students gathered around the display. Many were surprised. Claire had expected that. She was used to people noticing outcomes before understanding the process behind them. Later that evening, Kalen found her sitting outside the residence hall, looking at the stars above Veyra Prime. "Do you ever get tired of proving people wrong?" he asked. Claire thought about it. "Actually, I do not like proving people wrong." Kalen looked surprised. "Then what do you like?" She watched the distant lights of the Academy. "I like being prepared when people realize they were wrong." For the first time, Kalen understood that Claire was not chasing approval. She was not trying to become famous. She was not trying to embarrass anyone who underestimated her. She simply wanted to be ready. And that was what made her difficult to predict. The Academy had spent centuries training students to overcome opponents. Claire Morgan was teaching them something they had forgotten. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room was not the one who wanted to win. It was the one who was willing to learn until winning became inevitable. The Academy changed after Claire Morgan's 5th week on Veyra Prime. Not officially. There were no announcements, no ceremonies, and no public acknowledgement. But everyone could feel it. The students who once ignored her now watched her closely. The instructors who once questioned her presence now studied her methods. Claire had become something the Academy did not expect. Not the strongest student. Not the fastest. Not the most skilled. She had become the one person nobody could predict. That was why the next evaluation was different. The Abyss trial was the oldest challenge at the Academy. Every student knew its reputation. It was designed to test judgment, patience, and the ability to make decisions without complete information. Many students prepared for it like a competition. They studied previous results. They memorized successful strategies. Claire did something much simpler. She asked questions. "Why does nobody talk about the students who fail?" she asked Kalen the night before the trial. He looked confused. "Because they fail." Claire shook her head. "That is exactly why it matters. If everyone only studies the winners, they are only learning half the story." Kalen considered that. "You believe mistakes are valuable?" "I believe mistakes are expensive lessons." The smart thing is learning from someone else's payment. The next morning, Claire entered the Abyss training zone. The environment was unlike anything she had experienced before. The landscape stretched across several miles of unfamiliar terrain, designed to challenge every instinct a student had developed. The Academy provided limited equipment and one simple instruction: reach the observation point before the evaluation ended. Most students immediately moved forward. Claire stayed behind for several minutes. She watched the environment. She studied the patterns. She noticed something unusual. The path markers were not placed to guide students toward the destination. They were placed to make students believe they were being guided. Claire looked at the first marker, then at the landscape around it. "They want us to follow the obvious path," she said quietly. Kaylin looked back. "And you think that is wrong? I think it is incomplete." Together, they continued carefully. Hours passed. Other teams moved quickly ahead, confident they had solved the challenge. Claire and Kaylin moved slower, but they kept learning. They adjusted when conditions changed. They changed direction when new information appeared. They never assumed the first answer was the correct one. As the final hours approached, Kaylin finally asked the question he had been thinking about for weeks. "Claire, why are humans like this?" She looked at him. "Like what?" "You are always looking for another way, another option, another solution, even when everyone else believes the answer is already clear." Claire smiled slightly. "Because on Earth, clear answers are usually the ones that get people into trouble." Near the end of the trial, they discovered the final challenge was not reaching the observation point. It was deciding whether the objective itself was worth completing. The Academy had designed the scenario so that the easiest path would create a poor outcome. The best students were expected to recognize the hidden problem. Claire did. She did not just solve the test. She understood it. When they returned, Commander Thorne personally reviewed their results. "You understand this was not a normal performance," he said. Claire nodded. "I assumed it was not." The commander studied her. "Most students try to prove they belong here." Claire looked around the academy halls filled with generations of history. "I am not trying to prove anything. I am trying to become someone who can handle being here." Those words stayed with Commander Thorne long after she left. Because for the first time in many years, the academy was not teaching a student. It was learning from one. The academy had spent weeks trying to understand Claire Morgan. They measured her reactions, studied her decisions, and compared her results with thousands of previous students. But the more they observed her, the more they discovered something unusual. Claire was not difficult to understand because she was unpredictable. She was difficult to understand because she looked at problems from a completely different direction. The instructors wanted to know how far she could go. The students wanted to know what she was capable of. But Claire was asking a different question. She wanted to know what everyone else was missing. That question became more important when the academy introduced the final stage of advanced evaluation. It was not a test created to find the strongest student. It was designed to reveal the kind of person someone became when there were no obvious answers. The assignment was called the command simulation. Students were placed into leadership roles and given responsibility for a complex scenario involving multiple groups, limited resources, and changing conditions. Kaylin Voss was assigned as team leader. Claire was assigned as a support analyst. At first, several students were surprised. They expected Claire to be placed in the background. After all, she was still a human in a school filled with legendary species. Kaylin looked at the information panel and then at Claire. "They expect me to lead." Claire nodded. "Yes." "And they expect you to advise." "Yes." Kaylin studied her. "You are not disappointed?" Claire looked confused. "Why would I be? Most students want authority." Claire smiled slightly. "Authority is only useful if you know what to do with it." The simulation began. At first, everything appeared simple. The team had clear objectives. They had enough resources. They had a straightforward path forward. Then the situation changed. A new problem appeared. The original plan no longer worked. Several students immediately started arguing about the best response. Some wanted to move faster. Others wanted to protect their original strategy. Claire remained quiet. Kaylin noticed. "You have an idea?" "I have a question." "What question?" Claire looked at the changing information on the screen. "Why did the situation change now?" Kaylin paused. "Because the simulation is designed to challenge us." Claire shook her head. "No. It changed because the designers wanted to see how we react when our first plan stops working." The team looked at her. "So what do we do?" one student asked. Claire answered calmly. "Stop defending the old plan. That sentence changed everything. Instead of trying to save what they had already created, the team started building something new. They listened. They adapted. They accepted that being wrong was not failure if they could correct it quickly. When the simulation ended, their final score surprised everyone. They were not the fastest team. They were not the most efficient at the beginning, but they recovered better than anyone else. Commander Thorne watched the results in silence. She changed the way they think, one instructor said. He nodded. No. She reminded them how to think. Later, Kalen found Claire outside the Academy observation deck. The planet below was covered in clouds and distant lights. Do you know what the others are saying about you? He asked. Claire looked over. Probably something exaggerated. Kalen almost laughed. They say you are dangerous. Claire raised an eyebrow. Because I can fight. No, he replied. Because you make people question things they were certain about. Claire looked back at the planet. That does not sound dangerous. Kalen looked at her seriously. To people who never question themselves, it is. Claire did not answer immediately. She simply watched the stars above Veyra Prime. She had arrived at the Academy as an accident. A name entered into the wrong system. A person nobody expected to matter. But now the galaxy's most talented students were beginning to realize something important. Claire Morgan was not trying to defeat them. She was showing them a better way to survive. The Academy had reached a point where nobody questioned whether Claire Morgan belonged anymore. The question had changed. Now they wanted to know what she would become. For weeks, Claire had been evaluated, observed, and tested. Every challenge was designed to expose her limits. Instead, every challenge revealed something the Academy had not expected. Claire did not have the advantages of the other students. She did not have enhanced abilities, generations of military tradition, or years of specialized training. But she had something the Academy had never been able to measure: the ability to adapt without losing herself. That was why the final evaluation attracted the attention of everyone on Veyra Prime. The Academy instructors called it the integration trial. It was not a competition. It was not a battle. It was a test of leadership under uncertainty. Students were placed into teams with different species, different personalities, and different ways of thinking. The goal was simple: complete a mission together. The difficulty was that nobody received the same information. Each person had only part of the picture. When Claire entered the command room, she immediately noticed something strange. Her team members were already arguing. A Veyran student wanted a direct approach. A core strategist wanted a mathematical solution. Another student believed the safest option was to wait. Kalen looked at Claire. What do you think? Claire looked around the room before answering. I think everyone is trying to solve the problem before understanding it. The others became quiet. The mission has already started, one student said. We are losing time. Claire nodded. Exactly. Someone wants us to feel rushed. Kalen studied the information on his display. You think the pressure is part of the test? I think pressure always reveals something. The team continued, but this time they stopped trying to prove their own ideas were right. They started listening. They compared information. They searched for patterns instead of arguments. Slowly, the group that had started with the most disagreement became the most coordinated team in the room. But then the simulation changed again. A new situation appeared. The original objective was no longer possible. The team had two choices: follow the original plan and fail, or create a completely new approach. Everyone looked at Kalen. He looked at Claire. What would you do? Claire thought for a moment. I would ask why the objective changed. And if we cannot find the answer? Kalen asked. Claire looked at the team. Then we focus on what we can control. That answer became the turning point. The team stopped chasing a perfect solution. Instead, they created a practical one. They protected their resources. They communicated clearly. They accepted uncertainty. When the simulation ended, the results surprised even the instructors. The team had not achieved success because they had the best strategy. They achieved success because they had the ability to change strategy when reality changed. After the evaluation, Commander Thorne approached Claire. Do you understand why this academy exists? He asked. Claire looked at the students training in the distance. To prepare people for difficult situations. The commander shook his head slightly. That is part of it. This academy exists because the galaxy is full of people who believe their way is the only way. Claire listened carefully. And you think I challenge that? No, he replied. You remind people that another way exists. Later, Kalen joined Claire on the observation deck. Below them, the lights of the academy stretched across the landscape. When you arrived, Everyone thought you were the weakest person here, he said. Claire smiled. I noticed. Now they think you are the most unusual. She looked at him. Is that better? Kaelin considered the question. I think it is more accurate. Claire looked toward the stars. She still did not feel like a legend. She still felt like the same person who had stepped off that shuttle weeks ago. The difference was that now, the galaxy had started paying attention. They had expected a human who needed to prove she belonged. Instead, they found someone who had never needed permission to learn. And somewhere inside the Academy records, Claire Morgan was no longer listed as an unexpected arrival. She was listed as the beginning of something nobody fully understood yet. The morning after the final evaluation, Claire Morgan expected things to return to normal. She expected another schedule, another assignment, another challenge waiting behind the Academy doors. Instead, when she entered the main hall, she found something she had never seen before. Silence. Not the uncomfortable silence from her first day. Not the silence of people who did not know what to say to the human who had arrived by mistake. This was different. It was the silence of respect. Students from dozens of worlds stood nearby, watching as Claire walked through the academy that once questioned whether she belonged. She still carried the same simple bag. She still wore the same practical uniform. Nothing about her had changed, but everything around her had. Commander Ryland Thorne stood near the entrance. Claire Morgan, he said. She stopped and looked at him. Yes, Commander. He held a small data device in his hand. Your official academy record has been updated. Claire looked at the device. Updated to what? The commander paused for a moment. Not a warrior classification. Not a command classification. Something different. He handed it to her. Claire looked at the screen. There was only one line. Adaptive Specialist. She looked confused. I did not know that was a category. Commander Thorne smiled slightly. It was not. Claire looked back at him. Then why create it? The commander looked across the academy grounds. Because sometimes the galaxy discovers something new, and the old categories stop being useful. Later that day, Kaelin found Claire near the observation deck. It had become their usual place. From there, they could see the mountains of Veyra Prime and the endless sky beyond them. You know they are going to tell stories about you, Kaelin said. Claire smiled. That sounds like a problem. Most people would be proud. Claire looked down at the planet below. Stories are dangerous. Kaelin looked surprised. Why? Because people usually remember the ending and forget the journey. She continued looking at the lights below. They will say I came here and changed everything. They will forget that I was confused. They will forget that I was afraid. They will forget that I spent most of my time trying to understand things I did not know. Kaelin was quiet. He had expected confidence from her. He had expected ambition. What he had not expected was honesty. Then what should they remember? He asked. Claire thought about Earth. About every person who had ever felt out of place. Every person who entered a room where they believed they did not belong. They should remember that being different is not the same as being less. Those words stayed with Kaelin long after Claire left. Years later, students would study her time at the academy. They would analyze her decisions, her methods, and the unusual way she approached every challenge. But the most important lesson was never written in any official record. Claire Morgan did not become important because she was stronger than everyone else. She became important because she refused to believe strength had only one definition. The galaxy had spent centuries celebrating those who were born with advantages, natural abilities, powerful worlds, ancient traditions. Then a human arrived by accident and reminded everyone of something they had forgotten. The ability to learn could be more powerful than the ability to already know. The courage to adapt could matter more than the confidence of being prepared. And sometimes, the person everyone thought did not belong was the person who showed everyone else how to move forward. Claire Morgan left Veyra Prime many years later, but the Academy never removed her name from its records. Not because she was the strongest student, not because she defeated everyone who doubted her, but because she changed the question. The galaxy stopped asking, how powerful are humans? Instead, they began asking something much more important. What could humanity become if it never stopped learning?